What is my purpose?
You sacrifice yourself for value.
Oh my god.
Yeah, welcome to the club, pal.
Hey guys, this is your fiery friend the Infernoman here, and if you're into games, you're right where you need to be. But before we get into it, if you like the content that I put out there, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit me up with a like, or even better, subscribe to me. It really shows that people do care about my content. Now, if you have questions, comments, stuff you'd like to see played or discussed, you can @me on Twitter or chat directly with me as I stream 2 to 3 times a week on Twitch. A visual link for those are up on the screen right now, and I will have direct links in the details below. And for today's deck tech, we're going to be going over what I call Servo Sacrifice, a personal little brew of mine. I mean, again, I am a fan of actually sacrificing for value decks, but everyone's all over, of course, the Rakdos and Jund ones. But if you are a fan of Sacrifice and you want to play something a little off the beaten path, maybe also you don't have that many rares and mythics to utilize, this version is actually a nice budget style of Sacrifice. The whole point of this deck is to utilize cards like Hidden Stockpile and the Witch's Oven Cauldron Familiar combo to generate a ton of value of life gain and drain. But as always, if you are a new person to these kinds of videos that I do, here's basically how I do this. The rundown is always we will go over the creature package first, then we will go over the non-creature spells. We'll talk about the Landbase if applicable. We'll go over the sideboard to show you what are your options. We'll have a match against Sparky to show you how the deck is meant to be run. And of course, if you are a fan of this style of deck, a way to upgrade down the line. But with that, let's go ahead and dive right on in. To begin with the creature package, we will be utilizing 26 creatures total, not including, of course, our companion, Loris. But anyways, let's go over the game plan. Again, the deck's whole purpose is to sacrifice creatures for value and also to generate a lot of life gain and drain. We do actually have a couple of big payoffs within the creatures themselves. Archfiend's Vessel is really nice to have as a 1-drop, and if it does die, we can try to bring it back using one of our recursion spells, which we'll explain in a little bit, to create a 5/5 flying demon. If we can do this early enough, this is actually a pretty fast clock against our opponent. But normally, always assume that your opponent is going to destroy the demon before it gets to do anything. So with that, the main game plan, of course, is utilizing your Cauldron Familiar and Serrated Scorpion with the help of Loris. If you haven't already seen it before, obviously Cauldron Familiar, when it enters the battlefield, the opponent loses 1 life and you get to gain 1 life. I'm pretty sure you guys have already seen the Cat Oven strategy, so I'm not going to go over it again here. Serrated Scorpion is a slower version of the Cauldron Familiar combo, but it is a little bit more potent because when it dies, it'll hit your opponent for 2 and you get to gain 2 life. In order for you to do this combo, however, you will need to have Loris on the battlefield or again a recursion spell to bring this back. That's why we will only have 2 copies in the deck. As for one of your sack outlets, Priest of Forgotten Gods is a great card to have, and it really sometimes can make a massive swing in your favor if you time it right with the sack ability. As far as your other pingers, you will have 12 in the deck. We have a lot of creatures already, so Corpse Knight is great to have, and also we do have a way of generating tokens, which again we will explain in the non-creature package. Cruel Celebrant and Blood Artist mostly do about the same thing, except the only difference is Cruel Celebrant goes off whenever it's not just your creatures, but also planeswalkers. Of course, granted, we don't have planeswalkers in the deck. It's just also a nice bonus if you want to talk upgrades, which again, we'll go over a little bit later. Blood Artist is a little worse, believe it or not, than the Cruel Celebrant. 1, because it's a lot weaker, and 2, you have to actually target a player. There are going to be some matches where you might end up having an opponent that gets hexproof on themselves, which means the Blood Artist can no longer target them, unlike the Cruel Celebrant, which just goes over, again, each opponent. Remember, read your text, everybody. Reading the card definitely tells you how the card is played. I would highly recommend you practice with Sparky just to give you a little bit more of a feel of how you want to handle your sacks. But again, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue on to the next part, which is, of course, the non-creature spells. As far as the non-creature spells in the deck, we have a couple of them, but they are all very synergistic and they're all very important to how we're trying to make this deck work. Call of the Death Dweller and Malachor Rebirth. Both of these cards allow us to bring creatures back to the battlefield under various conditions. So you want to basically utilize Malachor Rebirth to kind of do more of a suicidal attack. So this way, in case of one of your creatures does die, we can immediately bring it back to the battlefield. Granted, you do lose 2 life, but a lot of this deck does provide life gain, so that -2 life isn't too bad. Not to mention, although we do have quite a few lands in the deck, the land can be great in a pinch if you use the Malachor Mire flip side of the card. It is great that usually you will always get 2 cards back for the 3 mana. Don't underestimate, of course, that they can also have a Death Touch and Menace counter on either creatures that you put out there. So take advantage of that, because sometimes putting even a Death Touch counter on something as weak as a Cauldron Familiar can make a big difference in the game. of course, the whole point of the deck is to use Hidden Stockpile. Hidden Stockpile, if you haven't seen this card, it is a black and white enchantment with Revolt. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, create a 1/1 colorless Servo artifact creature token. You may pay one of any and sacrifice a creature to scry one. So if we can get at least one copy out and generate extra Servo creature tokens, this can help you generate value with cards such as the Priest of the Forgotten Gods. It pings off of the Corpse Knight, and it does trigger off of things if you sacrifice it to either scry one, or maybe you're using the Witch's Oven to create some food, and this will help you also ping your opponent using those Blood Artists, using the Cruel Celebrants. So it's actually a really sweet card. To be honest, I know this card actually is pretty powerful when used in the right shell, but I think the reason why we haven't seen this card utilized that much is because it's overshadowed by the Rakdos Sacrifice deck and the Jund Sacrifice, which are arguably a lot more powerful. But hey, if you were into those decks, then, well, you wouldn't be watching my budget jank videos now, would you? Anyways, the final card that I just mentioned needs no introduction, of course, Witch's Oven. Of course, this goes with the Cat Oven strategy, so that's a great simple loop that you can do to trigger off Hidden Stockpile all the time. Remember, the keyword here is if a permanent you control left the battlefield. So it can be a token, it can be a sack land, whatever you need to have it do, it can ping off of that. You know, the cute thing actually really quick, this actually happened in a couple matches of mine when I tested this deck out, was the Hidden Stockpile actually did get blown up by an opponent, but in the same turn I was actually able to get Luris to bring back the Hidden Stockpile on the same turn, and it still triggered off. Just a nice little FYI in case if you guys are curious if that actually does work. All right, anyways, let's move on to the land base. As far as your land base is concerned, nothing too fancy here, but there are some cute tricks that we are trying to pull off. Remember that, again, we are running a budget, so this is why you're only running 5 plains and 8 swamps. You will, however, need 1 Castle Ardenvale, because this can help us generate tokens when we need to. Remember, the tokens that we do generate still synergize off of the Corpse Knight. If we have to sack them, we can utilize them for the Priest of Forgotten Gods. You basically get the idea. So we do want to at least have 1 in the deck, which can help us generate more value. Castle Lochwain, of course, to help us draw cards. Remember that also, since this deck does help with life gain as well as drain, Castle Lochwain's pings won't hurt us too badly, so it's great to at least have 1 copy in the deck, if nothing else, to help us keep our hand filled. And of course, 4 Evolving Wilds. The 4 Evolving Wilds actually do have more purpose than just for the servos from the Hidden Stockpile, which we will show you when we get to the sideboard. As far as our sideboard, besides the Luris we just mentioned that is part of our companion, we also were going to be utilizing for Disruption, Duress, and the 4 Fatal Pushes. Remember how I just mentioned right now that Evolving Wilds? Yeah, that's also a reason why we have it. So we can also trigger off Fatal Push in a pinch if we absolutely need to. 2 Soul Guide Lanterns for Graveyard Hate. And also it's nice to also draw a card off of it if you have to sack it. Also, what's cute is this also still triggers off the Revolt ability because you can sacrifice it when you need to. So just an FYI as well. And finally, thanks to our new Strixhaven set, we are utilizing 4 copies of Fracture. This is a card that's actually really good for our deck because it not only helps us get rid of artifacts and enchantments, but also pesky planeswalkers that Fatal Push cannot hit. But otherwise, that's pretty much it for the sideboard. Nothing, again, too crazy. It just gives us just enough to work with to get a little bit of everything. This is one of those decks that I highly recommend not to over sideboard on, because you want to make sure that you are maintaining the synergies of your sacrifice strategy. Also, one side note, I don't know about you guys, I understand the rule change with the best of 1, best of 3 sideboard, but I'm sorry, this actually, the way this is laid out just bugs me so much. I don't know. Do you guys actually like this new setup? Let me know in the comments below. But aside from that, let's go ahead and get into a match with Sparky to show you how the deck is run. All right, versus Sparky, we have our Servo Sacrifice deck. So in this one, we have, all right, we do have a black source and a white source. We do have our 2 of our main payoffs for pinging, a way to bring them back to life with Malika Rebirth, a Called Death Dweller, and a Priest. All right, I like the sand. It's not going to be extremely quick, but this deck actually is not really meant to be a fast deck. It's meant to be very grindy. So just be aware of that. All right, Corpse Knight comes in. So now every creature we can play, we can start slowly pinging them down. Ooh, Sparky, you have to play a card that actually gains life. Ew. That's going to be annoying. But don't worry, we will find a way around that. Cruel Celebrant. Ping. No attacks. Now, at least not until we get the Malika Rebirth ready. Locks it on. They gain some life back. That's fine. All right. Well, a second Corpse Knight actually would be helpful here, so we'll put in another one. No attack still. It's tempting to put down the Malika Rebirth as mana. Don't be afraid to if you absolutely really need it just to get your mana fixed. But this deck does run 19 lands. 4 of them are Evolving Wilds. And the rest, wow, we just have literally all black and just not really anything else going on. Huh. Well, I guess Priest of the Forgotten Gods is going to come in. 2 pings off of that. Sparky is still ahead of us here, which is, again, annoying. But we will get through this. We'll show you through this method how we can make this work. All right, they pump up their Fencing Ace, which is actually pretty smart of Sparky to do. That's going to be actually really annoying to get across. No blocks. So we're going to lose a chunk of life here, but that's okay. We're not down yet. Okay. How do we get out of this? I think the Serrated Scorpion comes in. 2 big pings. Do we do this now? I think hold on. Let's go attacking. We attack with, actually we'll keep back the Cruel Celebrant. Attack with the Corpse Knights. Sparky goes down to 14. We now hit with the Priest of Forgotten Gods. Sacrifice a Serrated Scorpion and a Corpse Knight. So we get a bit of life back. Ping them. Now we swing back in our favor. Ooh, Hidden Stockpile also. This is actually what we wanted. This is good. Hidden Stockpile. And let's see. Do we want to do this now? Maybe we'll get a second Priest of Forgotten Gods. Let's put that instead. Corpse Knight. And actually, now that we are close to winning, we can now put down the Malika Rebirth as a land. So let's just do that. And remember, with Stockpile, the Revolt ability triggers off as long as a permanent you control left the battlefield. So as I mentioned earlier, we were discussing the deck tech. That includes our Evolving Wilds, we have them, a token, it doesn't matter. Even we can actually sack tokens to make more tokens, which is actually pretty sweet too. So just remember that when you're playing this deck. Okay, so Sparky swinging in. We got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7. We will take that, because Sparky probably can't have any other things around that. Okay, cool. So we have our Evolving Wilds, which is great. This actually gives us a free token just for sacking it. We need more black sources, so put in the Swamp. Cauldron Familiar. Call of the Death Dweller to bring back the Scorpion and the Knight. And see, what do we put a Death Touch counter? We'll probably put it on the Scorpion and a Menace counter on the Knight. 3 pings off of that. All right, see? We're doing stuff. All right. No attacks. End the turn. So again, Revolt goes off. 2 more triggers from the Corpse Knights. All right, now we are in range. And what's sweet about this is, remember, Hidden Stockpile you can also use as kind of like a more expensive Cauldron. I'm sorry, not the Cauldron Familiar. A more expensive version of the Witch's Oven. And you can sack your tokens if you need to for the Priest here. Let's actually do that now. We can just drain now. And I think we got this already won. Actually, no, we'll let them attack. So this way we can chump block and then we can sack. They gain some life back, which is annoying. But again, we are in control here. So actually, you know what? Let's just make it our turn. Oh, okay, there we go. Now we are set. We're set for victory now. Okay. So here's how you're going to do this. So you have a choice here. You can either go full on attack or let's see. Let's just actually, we will actually attack. Bring back the Priest of the Forgotten Gods. And let's see what Sparky blocks. They're going to lose either way here, but the point I'm trying to make is showing you how you can make this work. Sack. Actually, hold on. We want to make sure we can actually do this correctly. Okay, so... All right, so really quick, Malika Rebirth on the Cruel Celebrant. Have the trigger go off now. Sack both of our tokens. Ping. Down to 5. Down to 3. And there you go, guys. That is the alternate way to do it. You actually could just sack now everything if you really want to. So this is the alternate way using our stockpile. And Cauldron Familiar, sure, why not? Cruel Celebrant goes off. Down to 2. Archimedes Vessel doesn't really matter at this point. Hidden Stockpile again. The Scorpion, because remember, trigger goes off on that. There you go, Life Drain without using the Cauldron Familiar combo, and that's the other way to win. All right, guys, let's go ahead. We're going to go now to the options to upgrade this if you are a fan of this version of Sacrifice. Now, as far as upgrades to the deck, first off, the only thing I want to stick to is maintaining the Loris as a companion game plan for upgrades. And the reason I want to do that is it's not that I don't want to go for bigger creatures and foregoing the Loris restriction, but keep in mind that if you do that, you might as well then just be playing the Rakdos or the Jund version of Sacrifice. And again, nothing against those decks. I actually do have those decks built and I do enjoy playing with them once in a while, but I wanted to really make something that differentiates itself enough to then be considered as an alternative Sacrifice. But otherwise, Legion's Landing in the 1-drop slot to create some more tokens and also to create another land for you. Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Kozilek to upgrade Out of Your Duress for the sideboard. I probably would recommend maybe Thoughtseize first, as it's a better card all around. Losing the 2 life may hurt at first, but considering how much life gain we have in the deck, it's actually not going to be very detrimental. If you are a little bit more on the meme-ish side, Mana Tithe is a hilarious card if you have a playset of them to counter your opponent because they never ever see it coming. As far as the 2-drop slot, you have Thalia if you want to hose non-creature spells. Remember, our deck is mostly going to be creatures anyway, so Thalia wouldn't hurt us too bad as a consideration. A spicy option that I would recommend is Blot Out the Sky. If you time this right, you can make a lot of Inkling creature tokens, which can be evasive with their flying ability, or if you need to, you can utilize them for sacking and value that way. Inscription of Ruin, which is also nice to help either discard some opponent's cards out of their hand, bring back another one of our creatures from the graveyard to the battlefield, or destroying something on the spot. The kicker ability also, if you are willing to pay for it, also can just generate, again, more value. Silver Quill Command is also another option that I like. Again, it's a little on the slow side, but being able to create one of your creatures into a +3/+3 flyer can help you sometimes close out the game faster that way. And also, just like the Inscription of Ruin, it has the ability to bring back one of our creatures with a mana value of 2 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. With the exception of Loris, every one of our creatures is 2 or less, so this is guaranteed to bring back something. If you're looking for one other card, I would also consider Consecrate Consume. This really is more of a dependence on what the meta is shifting towards. If we still need more graveyard hate, Soul Guide Lanterns, maybe you want to consider at least a 3rd or 4th copy if you really need to. If you want something alternative that's quick on the spot, Consecrate itself is great because it is instant speed. And the Consume side is also pretty nice on creature decks that are really big on, well, big creatures, because then you'll be able to gain the life back equal to its power. Before you put any of these cards in, please upgrade the land base first. As always, I cannot stress that enough. Get your Godless Shrines, get your Isolated Chapels, get the Concealed Courtyards, get the Blight Climb, oh, wow, I cannot speak. Basically, get the Pathway lands. Otherwise, that's all I got for you guys for upgrades. Again, if you want to go beyond the Loris, there's nothing wrong with that, but then you're more likely to shift towards the Rakdos or the Jund Sacrifice decks. So let's keep this deck small and simple, and honestly, you can still have a good time with this. And that is Servo Sacrifice for all of you. So what do you think? Are you a fan of actually having an aristocrat style deck that's a little bit different than the Rakdos and Jund versions out there? Are you a fan of budget jank decks in particular? Because I love doing these. It's been a little while since I've done a couple of these, so I do apologize again. I'm trying to work on my actual career, so this is becoming a little bit more of a part-time fun thing for me to do when I actually have the time available. But aside from that, guys, be sure to let me know in the comments below if you do want me to continue making some of these, or if you want to see more shorts, hey, just check those out at the bottom. I have a lot of packs still to crack open. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe if I helped you out, you learned something, or at least I entertained you. And remember that no matter what you do play in the game of life, always remember to burn bright. Later.